Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. This is part 2 of the Mandela Effect is Real series. A couple of things I want to get out of the way right up front. I apologize for taking so long to get this information out to you guys. I know it's been a long time since the last video, but I had a couple of things going on. I've been pretty busy coaching, helping coach baseball team here during the fall, and a couple 3 games during the week, so it's taken a lot of my time and leaving me a little bit tired. But anyway, so enough of that. What we're looking at here, of course, is the Mandela effect, and what I wanted to get into in part 2 is what I believe to be, at this point, a very plausible explanation for the experience in and of itself. And so, without wasting any other time, we'll get right into this portion. And my opinion and the view that I have on this is not really going to be too much different from what a lot of other people have mentioned. So the phenomenon in and of itself is very, very perplexing. It's very interesting, and something that's pretty difficult to wrap your mind around. But if we give consideration to the information that we have, then it becomes very plausible that we might actually be experiencing something connected to the quantum computers. And in this image that you're looking at, this is the creator of the D-Wave quantum computer. And I know a lot of people are familiar with information that Anthony Patch has put together and the research that he's done on quantum computers and the D-Wave in particular. And so this, in my opinion, this is not something I'm saying, oh, I've discovered, or I've come up with this ultimate explanation here. But what I'm hoping to do is to be able to present enough what I would consider strong that this may be actually what's occurring. And so there is a video with Mr. Jordan, the creator of D-Wave, where he's talking about the power of the computers and having the ability to go into other dimensions and other worlds, and the existence of parallel worlds that run alongside of the world in which we live and operate in, our current reality. He says in this video that the computers are able to exploit those other worlds and gather resources, or bring back things, I suppose, from these other dimensions. And if you're hearing that for the first time, it's very difficult to process. It's something that may be a stark contradiction to what you typically would believe and what you have accepted as the truth about the world. I myself personally, in hearing him say these things, it's a little bit difficult for me as well, especially trying to find a religious background and a basis for that. Obviously, the information that I would present holds a biblical worldview. And so it's also difficult for me to really try and understand exactly why, if we have parallel worlds that spring out based on choices that we make, why God, who knows the beginning from the end, would have the need for a parallel world or some alternate universe where these other scenarios are playing out. A God who knows the beginning from the end would know not only the choices that you were going to make before you made them, but also the choices you were going to have to begin with. So it's something that it's difficult for me also. But this is why I think it's plausible. So based on what he said in that talk, which I believe was actually a few years ago, we know that Google and NASA immediately jumped on board back in 2013 with the idea of quantum computing, along with NASA, as I mentioned. So, they were on board showing an interest in the ability of quantum computers at that time. We also have interest in the detection and exploring, I guess, of other dimensions. This article from March of 2000 talks about discovering new dimensions at the LHC, and I'll leave a link to this article. You guys can read through that. But even back in the year 2000, they're talking about using the collider for detecting particles in another dimension. And this one also, I'm not sure the date on this one, but it also is talking about experiments where we're looking at different particles, whether or not they actually disappear, or whether or not they go into another dimension. And so in terms of science, physics in general, it would seem that there is, not only an interest, but apparently pretty solid evidence that, there's something on the other side, something in that fifth dimension. And I think that is where we see a lot of the connections to the quantum computer, and where I think a lot of what we would consider, I guess, changes would actually be coming from. And if you can, if you can try and process this, if you consider what Geordie Rose has said, resources from a parallel world, then it could in fact be possible that they may be bringing back other things. Some of those things could be differences, as he mentions, between that world and this one. But what I believe is happening is that I don't think that it would be a situation in which they're actually exploiting different physical worlds per se. That may be a possibility. I'm not totally convinced on that. I think where they're going and what they're tapping into is something beyond what we typically would see, the 4 dimensions that we would think about, but not necessarily, again, an actual physical world where it springs into existence from different decisions. The idea there would be, for example, if you go to a restaurant that has value meals, and they have value meals 1 through 7, and you're trying to make a decision on value meal number 2 and value meal number 5, and you decide to take value meal number 5. So in this scenario, at that moment, it could be possible that another world springs into existence where you have taken value meal number 2. But there would not be another world that would spring into existence for value meals number 1, number 3, number 4, number 6, and number 7, because those were not viable options for you. So it would almost be a scenario where in this other world, it would only exist from potential options that you actually had, choices that you were actually trying to make and really choose from. Now that example is something very, very simple, but hopefully it, provides a good enough explanation for what would be, the consideration here. But again, I'm not necessarily totally convinced that that exactly is where they would be pulling back information and where they're spending their time. But we do see evidence, continued evidence of, the possibility of string theory. We know this article on CNET that I discovered, this one is about quantum entanglement. And again, I'll leave a link to this one as well. This experiment, it talks about the group who was able to use lasers and basically prove that the theory itself would be charged electrons, I believe. That if you were to take 2 electrons, you could have one here on the Earth, and you could send one on a rocket to the other end of the galaxy, and whatever you did to one of those electrons here on the Earth, it would happen to the other electron no matter how far away it was. And that would prove that those electrons, either information is traveling, at that greatest speed, or they're still somehow connected. And that's why I think they have Einstein's spooky quantum entanglement. But again, you guys can take a look at this article as well. And so this is not something, this is, I'll be honest, this really is above, my level. But, so I really could not say that what they're claiming that they're able to do, finding X particles and going into the 5th dimension, I really don't have the expertise to say that that's not a possibility. And what we're talking about is something that's very, very complicated. It's very complex. And on, a similar topic, not necessarily the exact same thing. But this article also from CNET is talking about how quantum mechanics is so weird that scientists need AI to design the experiments. And so you have computers that are so powerful that people are now in a situation where they have to design machines to the abilities of the computers. So you're looking at different algorithms and trying to get this computer or these computers to run different calculations. And we apparently are already, and probably have been for some time, at the point where we cannot, with the human brain, I guess, come up with, algorithms and things difficult enough for the computer to not be able to solve. Which obviously I guess would be the expected outcome. But it just shows you that it looks to be a little bit far beyond the general scope of where most people are and where a lot of scientists are in terms of really being able to get a full understanding of the total magnitude and the apparently amazing computing power of these quantum computers. And so this is something that definitely has to be on the table. And the reason why I believe it is a very real possibility that we have a direct connection to these computers and the Mandela effect or the quantum effect would, not just because of the exact words in saying pulling back resources from parallel worlds with, things similar to what you remember, right? Not just that, but also because of the connections to Google. And as I mentioned, we've got Google and NASA early on back in 2013, the AI lab, and they've come far along since that time. And what I really believe is at play here is the push for artificial intelligence. It's the ability to potentially create an entirely artificial framework around the world in which we live, and can be used and controlled to steer and engineer people. I mean, it sounds crazy. I mean, it really does. But when you read the articles, when you see the information, when you hear the words of the people themselves, it's difficult to sit here as a person on the couch who watches television and those kind of things and say, well, this physicist has no idea what he's talking about. So who am I to say that? So I have to give this, strong consideration, and that's what I've been doing. And the reason why I believe that it's a true possibility goes into Google, because even if we stop short of some type of completely artificial framework, we still have the desire for human advancement. We still have the belief that there exists outside of the world in which we live, the natural world. If we're able to break through, then we are able to reach a stage of human enlightenment, higher human consciousness. And I believe that this is the belief that would truly be backing this type of push. Because if you have a computer that has computing power like the world has never seen, you still have to ask yourself, what is the reason that you would build a machine that, number one, can detect parallel worlds, and number two, has the ability to exploit them? What's the reason for that, right? And I think it goes back to the basis of, science at its core truly being like a religion, and the belief that man will somehow transcend to something beyond himself and reach that next stage of human evolution. And I think there's a direct connection to that with Google, and of course Ray Kurzweil and his belief of the coming singularity. And so you're talking about the total connection between man and machine and technology. And I think that it's a possibility that if we're not actually in a situation where we're exploiting true physical worlds, that it may be aligned to this next step. So if you tell people that you can go into parallel worlds, I mean, you stand on the stage and you say something like that, and you speak it very plainly, I mean, that typically would be something that people might, have a difficult time with. I don't know how well that would go over. But I think even if it was to fall flat and people were not receptive to it, I still something to open people's minds and bridge that gap to the next step, again, of that evolution. And where we're going, as you can see, Time Magazine, 2045, the year man becomes immortal. And I think this is where this is heading. And so I would not be a person who would suggest that You're spending millions of dollars to build computers. You're spending billions of dollars to build, the LHC and what they have there at CERN to augment, JFK, or to put a gun in the hand of the Scarecrow, right? There has to be something much bigger at play than that. But I do believe that, whether directly intended, as far as those changes and the things that we're seeing, or something like collateral damage, because they're diving into the unknown. Regardless, I think it's something that is a controlled situation. It has to be, I think, very carefully controlled, because if they don't know where they're going, and if they don't know the outcome, or the possible outcome, then they themselves or anyone else could end up in a bad situation. So if we're looking at things that are changing for people, and you don't have any control over what's changing or what you're bringing back, then you run the risk of jeopardizing a lot. And so I believe, again, I don't know if these things are done intentionally and put out there, but I do know that the confusion that it causes, the mental stress that I talked about in part 1, that people experience in trying to wrap their minds around what they believe to be different, it's very real, and that's something that will be exploited and something that will be used as part of this whole scenario. So I believe it is very, very possible that where they're going, again, is not necessarily into this other world per se, but just outside of the world in which we know, tapping into this attempt to gain a higher level of consciousness, an attempt to pull forward the next level of human evolution. And I think that's really what we're looking at. And so another reason why I don't necessarily believe that we're looking at exploitation of an actual physical world is based on this report. And so you can find it in different places, but apparently a report came out in 1947 about visits that happen frequently from interdimensional beings. And we're talking about what we would see, or what we would commonly refer to as UFOs. And we're saying that these are not necessarily extraterrestrial, and meaning that they are coming from other planets or other worlds, but they are coming from another dimension, just outside of the world in which we know. And you can actually read this document on the FBI's Freedom of Information Act. It's available there, and you guys can take a look at that. I'm going to leave a link to it. And again, it talks about the existence of a portal, and these interdimensional beings coming through that portal and making contact with people. And so again, it's just a situation where above my level of thinking in general, above my general level of understanding and thought about the world. It is strongly based on my biblical worldview and my belief that science at its core is a religion. If you look at a lot of the scientific discoveries, they seem to be, in contrast to the biblical explanation of the world. So you've got CERN trying to, find information about the Big Bang. You've got the theory of evolution, and, the list goes on and on. And so I believe that it is also part of, that same idea, the same evolving of mankind, that will lead to the use of this quantum computer and will lead to the creation, ultimately, of what the Bible refers to as, what seems to be a computer framework that will encompass pretty much all of mankind. And I think another part that plays into this would be the changes to the human anatomy. And if you're talking about human evolution, and you're talking about singularity, and the downloading of the human consciousness, the quest for immortality, and the merging of man with technology, that also seems to be consistent with what we would see the Bible explain in Revelations. If the beast is to create a system that each person will be connected to, and that connection will be through some type of device, either in the hand or forehead, then you're talking about some type of biometric and potentially a DNA change to the human anatomy. And it may in fact be possible that what we have seen described as changes to the human anatomy, and if those changes actually have taken place, and if there are people who do not necessarily have that same type of structure, then it may also, it could lead to a rejecting and incompatibility with this type of future. And so that's something that's pretty interesting as well. If we have changes to the human anatomy, are there certain changes to the human DNA that lead us closer into this evolution, that make it easier for man to take this next step into this singularity and into this, transhumanistic period? And so, it's a lot going on, guys. It's really difficult to try and sort through. I couldn't say definitively that this is totally what's happening. But the more you look into it, the more it seems to be a true possibility. And I would lean much more toward this, as opposed to just some type of shift in human consciousness and thinking, right? That would be more along something New Age. And also, leaning more toward this than an act of God or something biblical directly. Because even if Mr. Rose and his computers have the power to tap into some type of other world and some type of alternate universe, there is absolutely no place that they can go that God will not see them. And so regardless of what they're tapping into, regardless of what they may be pulling out in terms of what they call resources, it's still only something that God would allow. And if this technology does in fact have this capability, that also would be something that he is allowing to happen. And so, this is basically just my perspective, just some things that were on my mind in terms of the Mandela effect, and just what I wanted to share with you as far as where I think it's going. I think there is there is a real connection to the computers, and I think this is ultimately what's behind it and where it would be going. And so what I'm thinking is that if we're not in other worlds, then we're opening people's mind to the possibility that there are other worlds, but where we're actually spending most of our time would be somewhere more along the lines of where those interdimensional beings lie. And we're getting back to this other, advanced technology and being able to get man to that next step. That's really what I think it is. And I think that most likely we will continue to see changes take place. I think that the changes will probably be larger and more noticeable to a lot of people, but there will be others who don't see them at all. And if that does in fact play out, then I think the reason behind that is what I've explained so far. And so I hope that I'm wrong on this. I hope that there's a better explanation. I hope that there's something that doesn't is sinister to explain what people have been experiencing. But this is pretty much the best that I can come up with, and why I think that it would be a possibility, and where they would be going if they are in fact using the computers. And again, expect things to continue to be different, and expect people to continue to not realize it. And but that's basically, my 2 cents. Again, sorry it's a long video, but trying to piece all this information together and show you the things that I've come across. Again, I'll leave links to all these articles and this information that I have. You can take your time, kind of go through all of this and piece it together yourself and form your own opinion about it. But I'll be back with other content and information. I'll try not to take as long to post another videos. But again, I've got a lot of things going on, busy schedule here, but so I apologize for that, but I'll be back with you guys as quickly as I can. So take a look, decide what you think. If there are other explanations and things that make more sense, let me know about those, and we'll continue to work on it together until we come up with an answer and maybe find a solution for everyone as far as what's going on. All right, that's it for now, guys. Thanks.